So good morning or good afternoon. We can see that we have got attendees from different parts of the world today. So welcome to the Day in the Life series, which will focus today on the theme DevSecOps team. Oops, I can see that my, let's unblock it. Sorry for that. So this webinar will be presented by Alma and myself, Jennifer. We are both senior solution engineers, and today we'll share our experience to help you understand how to bring development teams and security teams together. The main objective of the next 45 minutes, which is the time that we define, will be to help you to push the we rather than the me, which quite often this me indicates yourself making the main responsible of the security of your application. But before to kickstart this webinar, we'll make it slightly interactive by asking you some questions. So you will see that we will have several questions being asked during this webinar. So next question that we will ask may reflect why you are here with us today. So the question is, what are the challenges with DevSecOps or with deploying DevSecOps? You have two options to reply. You can feel free to reply directly in the chat or via the poll which just appear in front of your screen. We already provided different answers in order to help you to choose. The first one is complexity. Often, for example, you don't have the right process nor the right tool. Therefore, deploying DevSecOps practice is complex. Balancing speed and security is another option. You are pushed to keep the speed as fast as possible, and security can't be a bottleneck. Therefore, this is very difficult for you to inject or add security. The friction amongst cross-functional teams, this is a very common one. Your developer already considers security as a bottleneck. Therefore, this is difficult to inject more security in their workflow. Alert fatigue. You know, if you are creating more alerts in the software development lifecycle, it will simply be ignored. Therefore, alert fatigue is a challenge. Lack of resources. You are part, for example, of a small security team, and there is hundreds of devs that you need to cover. And the last one, this is roles and responsibility alignment. The responsibilities is simply not well defined with the different roles in each of the people in your company. So feel free to choose one or several of them, and we will review the result shortly. So I can see that quite a lot of people already reply. We have got complexity, which had been selected. We have got alert fatigue, which had been selected. Balance, speed, and security. This is definitely the one which seems to take the lead on this poll. We have got lack of resource, and I can see no one did reply friction among cross-functional teams or roles and responsibility alignment. So indeed, when you have all those, or you are facing all those challenges, this is something that may, in a way, lead to some issue when you are trying to set up this DevSecOps process. Most of our customers are facing the same challenges that you listed or voted for, and they have all a common point. This is the culture aspect. Here are a few examples of quotation. I have got 3 from our customers stating how important it is, how important the culture is. The example, for example, that you can see on my screen, this is this quotation. We focus on the tool, but forget the most important things, which is people and culture. This is very common in most of companies we start to work with. The process and tool are very well defined, but they don't ensure that the people are part of the definition of this process, which is causing an issue and is being the challenge. The next quotation is, if I can go to the next slide, is security culture is what employees do when the security team is unlooking. So this one is quite straightforward and can be potentially overly simplifying things, but adopting a successful security strategy is more critical than ever given the rapid pace of technology change. So that's for why security culture is important to be well defined. And the last one, this is, it's not the security team that does the security, this is the employees that code. So this one is quite important because at the end of the day, security comes down to what we enable our employees to do day in and day out. So this is not straight away the employees that code which are responsible of the security. This is also how the security is being brought to them in order for them to secure more their code. So after this long introduction, you may have understood now that today's webinar won't be there to describe or won't be focusing on describing the 6 benefits of DevSecOps. They are clear, and most of you, I believe, are aware of that, because DevSecOps, you know it, will allow faster delivery. It will improve your security posture. It will reduce your costs, enable also greater overall business success and efficiency by bringing up the ROI. It will improve, of course, your security integration and also the pace, which is quite important to keep faster delivery and speeds. And of course, it will enhance the value of DevOps if you have already DevOps value being brought into your process. So what we will do today, we'll review how to set a success DevSecOps approach, basically how to overcome the challenges that you described during the pod. As culture is key, the most important point is collaboration. But the collaboration needs the following 4 pillars for a successful strategy adoption. Those are measure, educate, iterate, and celebrate. So all those 5 points are very important and related to collaborate in any case, but they are important because your digital transformation or the overall digital transformation means that your attack surface is just expanding at a rapid pace. You all know that. You have new technology like continuous integration or CI/CD. You have got generative AI, which is all over the place. You have low-code platform, etc. All of those new technology which are adopted very quickly, but also introduce new risks that you need to manage your security team. So if you are in a position of being in a small security team, you will struggle to support more developments. So what you will expect developer to juggle infrastructure, juggle developing new feature, and now juggle with the security part too. So this we pronoun that we mentioned at the beginning, the we, this is the we which must ensure all together that we enable their work, meaning the developer work, the right way, and within the right culture, which is fundamental. And this is this culture which passed by collaboration. In conclusion, collaborate is basically developing security together. But let's go a bit further in collaboration, in identifying why collaboration is so important. Let me ask you 2 questions, which may bring more context into collaboration breakdown, but also all the complexity related to collaboration. So the first question is in here, a vulnerabilities is found in a security report. It can be a pen test. It can be, for example, a CI/CD log. It can be one of your vulnerabilities management system in place. In your point of view, who is responsible of fixing and finding also these vulnerabilities? Is it the CISO? Is it the dev team? Is it the security team or SecOps team? Is it the QA team? Sometimes it can be DevOps team or the processes team, or the processes in general, sorry. So I can see quite a lot of people did reply CISO, some dev team. Apparently dev team is the one which is the most answered. Security team, no one did reply security team. This is very interesting. We got a few votes now for security team. QA team, no one did reply, which is not surprising. DevOps team, and indeed processes, some people did reply processes. So is there any right answer for this one? There is no right answer, because it all depends your collaboration culture and effectively the processes which are in place. Now, you will see the difference between this question and the second question which will be asked, which is quite the same. Now, let's take another angle for this second question. You have your application which is exploited. Basically, a vulnerabilities that you let pass in your deployed application is exploited. Now, who is responsible? The CISO, the dev team, the security team, the QA team, DevOps team, or again, the processes. Let's see if you have got the same answer than the question before. Now we have got the CISO being mostly answered. The dev team, no one did reply dev team. security team and SecOps team is also seems to take the lead just after the CISO. QA team, again, there is no vote for the QA team. DevOps team, no vote, and processes, 1 vote. As you can see, CISO and security team are the one responsible, and most of the time, a lot of people will reply indeed CISO, because if there is an attack on your infrastructure or a hack on your application, indeed, by default, this is the CISO who is responsible. But this lack of, I would say, of agreement or good understanding of who is responsible, this is what leads to collaboration breakdown. So this collaboration breakdown, we have a perfect example also, which took place in Equifax. You might all remember the 2017 Equifax breach that impacted more than 147 million consumers. You had basically hackers who exploited an unpatched Apache trust vulnerabilities to steal highly sensitive personal data. This happened because Equifax security team didn't effectively communicate the critical need for patching to their developer. So see what I'm doing in here? I'm putting the responsibility on the security team. But this same type of responsibility and collaboration breakdown, this is something that when consulting with the different company that we are working for at Snyk, we also notice. You have got hundreds of developers which are aligned to a tiny team. So for example, a team of 5-person security team, which is trying to control everything, and the bottleneck is just boiling over. Now, asking the security team to take responsibilities on such action when you have got hundreds of developers to cover, this is impossible. We had an example where, for example, the security reviews and approvals brought development simply to a crawl, fostering resentment from the developer. The developer simply saw the security as a roadblock to be dodged rather than a partner helping them to succeed. So the end result, you may guess it, you had insecure workarounds in those companies, and also you had technical debt that introduced simply more risk. The developer lacked the skills and tools to own security. It was not their fault. It was not the fault of the security. It's just that the developer ended up doing the minimum needed to push code out. Their security strategy, or the security strategy which was in place, ended up simply failing, and each team was doing their own thing on their side. This is the perfect example to show why collaboration is key. Security measures are there to empower, not obstruct teams. Otherwise, if you obstruct teams, you will create a culture where developers resent security effort and do only what's forced upon them. We sometimes see variation of this example repeating through many interactions that we have with our customer, which is for why, even though we are Snyk, a company who is selling and developing a platform for security team and developer, we are aware that this platform on itself is not enough. So what is enough, basically? Enough, this is combining collaboration with people, process, and technology. All 3 elements are really crucial for success. Even the best technology and processes will fail if they don't work basically for your people. There is a lot of focus from company we are working with to build the right processes and pick the right technology for these processes, or pick the right technology and deploy processes around this technology. But that is basically the easiest part. Culture change within the organization is the most difficult. And I will give you an example. Let me go into directly my example demo. So this is the Snyk platform that you see on my screen. So the platform will give you quite a lot of integration setup, automation, but also a lot of capabilities, because the Snyk platform not only will provide you scanning capabilities to scan your code, SaaS capabilities, software composition analysis capabilities to scan your third-party libraries. It will also help you to scan your container image and your Docker file, so container scanning capabilities. And on top of that, we are adding we currently have also infrastructure as code capabilities, scanning capabilities, leading you to be able to scan configuration file. So you have a platform which can integrate with different tools that you are using already in your software development lifecycle. So those tools may be already there. So this platform can definitely adapt to your current process or enhance your DevOps process. And on top of that, from a security perspective, this tool will help you to automate assessment of certain type of application. So for example, when you do have an integration with your GitHub repo, for example, this integration will give you a full visibility of all the repo which are in your GitHub environment. You can select at any time one of the repo, click on Add Selected Repository, and you will, without setting any pipeline or complex setting, have a full scan which will be performed on, for example, this JavaScript application, which is quite vulnerable. So this advantage will give to the security team a view of the vulnerabilities which can be related to the package JSON that you can see in here that I'm opening in other windows, vulnerabilities which can be related to the Docker file, vulnerabilities which can be related to the SAST analysis. So as a member of the security team, I could connect, I could go into this project tab, I could review the artifact of result that I can gather directly from a connection with my GitHub repo. And I can also automate some type of fix that I would apply directly in my GitHub repo. So for example, in here, in my package JSON, I do have 46 vulnerabilities. Some of them, 32 of them are fixable. It means that not only Snyk is providing recommendation advice to fix those vulnerabilities, but Snyk will help me, security team, to apply a fix directly in a pull request automatically, which will basically raise a notification to the developer. So I can do that via a Jira also create a Jira ticket issue, but let's give it a try to fix these vulnerabilities directly via the automation that Snyk is offering. If I click on this button, it does open a fix pull request. It's asking me if this single pull request, I want to open it to apply one fix or several fix. We click on one fix only, and you can see we are redirected into GitHub with a fix pull request being created automatically on the behalf of the security team or Snyk in here, which detail why this is a fix, why this fix had been applied, which also apply the file change directly on the package JSON in here. So in here, the vulnerabilities is related to Angular, which is used in the version 1.3.9. And the version 1.4.0 is fixing the specific vulnerabilities, which is related, as you can see, to this Angular dependency. This is an arbitrary code execution. So the developer who are working not on a security platform, but are working on GitHub, for example, will be able to see this fix pull request and will be able to merge the fix or review the fix to, for example, the main branch. So a tool which provides automation, you may think this is perfect. I can create as many pull requests as I want and fix quite a lot of vulnerabilities. But let's go back to my project tab. In this example, I have only 3 projects. If you work with hundreds of developers, you will have either different organizations to go through and hundreds of projects to review. If you are part of a small security team, this job won't be able to be done. You will need to automate. This is something that we can provide, but you will need first to understand how to automate in order to not create too much noise with this fixed pull request. So where you will be member of the security team, you will be at the report table. So rather than being in the project tab, you will be at the report level. You will review, for example, in your SAST scanning capabilities, how many cross-site scripting have been found. So you can see in here, there is a fair amount of quite high-level severity vulnerabilities which had been detected. Overall, if you combine, for example, directly all the vulnerabilities and you have got all the issues which are open, let's click again on reports because I visited all the filter. You will want to see what are all the vulnerabilities which had been detected. Across only 3 repos, this is 171 vulnerabilities. This is where processes are important. which vulnerabilities I need to fix first, how I should fix them. Should I open a fix pull request? Shall I open a Jira ticket directly to the developer? Or do I do a meeting with the developer and ask them to fix them? So all those processes, even if the tool is granular to give you the filter that you need and give you the reporting and train or where your DevSecOps approach is being applied, we need strong processes in order to help you to set and leverage this tool. The last part, this is besides this report, which we gather evidence of the type of vulnerabilities to fix. Those open source dependencies, which are the issue which had been related to the Equifax breach. How to maintain them, how to keep them in a way in the right version in order to avoid having too many vulnerabilities into your repo. This is also something that new security team, you will end up being responsible for, even though this is your developer who are bringing most of those open source dependencies. Therefore, you can see you will also be in this dependency tab where you have got these SBOM capabilities giving you information of what type of dependency are being used in which project and identify which one you need to focus. But again, the developer will not connect to the platform. It will be you security team connecting to the platform. If you are not training your developer to gather this information directly from the ID, therefore it may be a cumbersome process for you. So defining the process, defining the role and responsibility, making sure that the right people are associated with the process and the tool, this is very important. That's for why Snyk, even if this is maybe the right tool because of the flexibility and because all the process that we can help you to put in place won't be enough if you don't take into account in the definition of the collaboration, your people. So this is very important to take that into account, people, because collaboration, as a summary, as I mentioned again, this is people, process, and technology. But collaboration rely on the 4 pillars, and Alma will give you the winning formula to also set up these 4 pillars.
Great. Hello, everyone. You've heard quite a few questions and a few ways in which you can integrate a tool like Snyk within your system. But how will you actually bring the people and the processes and the technology together? What's the winning formula? To be honest, there is no one size that fits all strategy. Every business will have its own challenges. But in the end, it's down to making it easy for everyone to do the right thing. So the decision on what to do as your next step in your security journey will depend from business to business and sometimes even from team to team. So if the goal is to continuously improve, then understanding what your current state is paramount for knowing what to do. So we said that we've identified 4 pillars to a successful security strategy. So measure, educate, iterate, and celebrate. We're going to speak now about each of them in a bit of detail. When it comes to measure, we're all drowning in a sea of metrics. So knowing what to measure and how to put that to good use is very important. After many years of conversations with hundreds and hundreds of customers at Snyk, we actually noticed a very strong correlation between a company's DevSecOps maturity and the next steps they need to take for a successful rollout of their security strategy. So we built a DevSecOps assessment. Starting with this maturity assessment can lay the groundwork. The key here is using measurements to inform your path and not to judge it. So what is this assessment? At Snyk, your technical success manager would use the DevSecOps assessment as the first step for building your success strategy. Today, I want to show you a small glimpse on how you can apply it yourselves. There are 2 axes on the DevSecOps security quadrant that we use for scoring. These are developer processes and security maturity. To explain this in more detail, developer processes is an umbrella term. We look at the company's developer processes, systems, and technologies that they've adopted. For example, mature developer processes could include things like agile methodology, using modern package managers, and maybe heavily utilizing CI/CD tooling. Whereas earlier stage developer processes may mean that teams are using waterfall methodology and haven't adopted a CI/CD pipeline. The quadrants for security maturity are pretty straightforward. Companies like banks usually fall into the high security maturity area because they live in a world of heavy regulations and they're mandated to use very clearly defined processes, which can sometimes make implementing a new tool a bit difficult because it requires a new type of thinking. Companies that have low security maturity would be startups and government organizations that are usually lacking the bandwidth or internal knowledge to build their security program. The importance of this assessment is understanding what is the ideal place to start when implementing your security program. So here's some questions that we ask in order to better understand where companies fall within this quadrant. So do you think you can easily answer the next questions? How many repositories do you have? How many critical applications do you have? How many repositories are currently covered by a security scanning tool? And how do you remediate a new day zero security vulnerability? Do you think it's really simple to answer or know exactly where to find the answer to all these questions immediately? So a few of you have already answered, and I'm going to say it's a 60-40, even more. Okay, it moved to a 70-30 towards a no. And that's okay. These are just the first steps for you to be able to just plot yourself onto the quadrant. For the 30% of you that actually said yes, what about these questions? What security KPIs are you measuring? Do you know immediately? Do you have a plan for tackling your vulnerability backlog? How do you gate against new vulnerabilities? And which automations do you have in place for security? Another set of, let's say, more advanced questions. Do you know how to answer this really fast? Some of the 30% from yes from earlier are staying strong. Actually, this has moved to an 80-20 towards a no. Which is what we actually see with our customers, and it's okay. Why do we do this assessment? So if we're to consider some businesses like plotted onto this quadrant, we can see here businesses 1, 2, and 3. We want to know what actions are recommended for them to take in the following areas. We talked about measure. So here is gaining visibility and prioritization. You must recognize some of the questions from earlier. Then educate, gaining developer buy-in and understanding. Iteration, automating and improving processes. And at the end, we have celebrate. This is celebrating wins. I will give you a hint that actually nobody starts there. So a business like Business One does not need to gain visibility or get developer buy-in. Currently, they already have processes and culture that are in place for this. So as they start with a new tool like Snyk, they're pretty mature, both development and security practices, and their main need would be to prevent new issues from entering their system. Whereas for Business 3 over here, with a low maturity in both areas, the picture can look a bit different. They will need to start from gaining visibility into their applications and understanding how to fix some of the existing issues before being able to bring in too many developers that could get overwhelmed with the sheer number of issues they see. Similar to what Jenny was saying before, if you will bring in hundreds of developers that will see thousands sometimes of vulnerabilities and they don't have a process for it, they won't know where to start. So if a business has especially a large code base and a lot of existing issues, building a process in which you work together with a developer to fix is imperative to start with. So now you've got your basic measurements. So we're moving towards education. So education instead of mandates.
So educate instead of mandate, what does it mean? It's quite self-explanatory, but what does it mean exactly? It means that you will need to bring the training to the developer. And you can bring this training by different type of initiative. The first one, for example, this is hackathons and capture the flag. Those are competition which bring security lessons to life in a very engaging way. So this is highly recommended by Snyk, for example, to engage your developer into bringing or coming into this training. This event challenged the developer to find vulnerabilities and exploit weaknesses in code, converting basically the security, which was difficult or adultery to your developer, into a kind of exciting skills. So organizing this type of event, hackathon, capture the flag, or fixathon, for example, also, which can be very fun, is quite often a good type of event to set up. Security champion program. This one is as important as hackathon. As security champion, what is a security champion? This is basically a developer who formally represents an engineering team within security. They are bridging, those are the key people in your company who are bridging the gap between developers and the security team. Security champion will help you educate teams on secure development and improve also the security check. They are, in a way, the developer who also understand the field and understand potentially the type of bottleneck that they would like to avoid. So they can not only help you to save the process, help you to educate your developer, but also help you to provide visibility into dev practice and way more. Then the last one, this is in context. So for the in context part, you need tool, because this is the most impactful part for security education. This security education, when you bring in context, basically happens in the flow of your developer actual work. ID integration, for example, and pull request feedback are the type of tool that you can leverage to help you with bringing training into the context. And I will show you an example how powerful it can be. So let's go, for example, in our ID. You saw my example, the damn vulnerable application, this JavaScript application full of vulnerabilities. You can see in my Visual Studio Code, and I hope you are seeing well now, then I do have a lot of red flag on some of my file in here. Those red flags are basically vulnerabilities that you can see I do have in my package.json in this manifest file, but also vulnerabilities which are, for example, in some type of my .js file in here. So Snyk will provide warning. Basically, we highlight those vulnerabilities directly in the ID of the developer. This is great to find, fix vulnerabilities, but also to provide, of course, visibility to the developer so they are aware that they are bringing vulnerabilities. But what we will do via the to-do list that we will provide in the plugin, so to-do list of those vulnerabilities that the developer need to fix, we'll also provide on the open source front and the code front, for example of fix and also type of learning content, which will help the developer to understand why a specific vulnerabilities need to be, for example, fixed. This is the example in here in notebook.js. I do have a cross-site scripting. Let's say that I'm a developer who don't know what is a cross-site scripting. Snyk will give me via the pop-up windows a bit more information. I will have information on how to remediate to this vulnerability. I will know where this vulnerability is, but does it teach me what a cross-site scripting is? Not really. This is not enough information for me as a developer to understand how to avoid cross-site scripting for example, in the next part of my code. So that's for why we provide link, for example, redirecting us to our learning platform, which will demonstrate, for example, to the developer a lesson or a specific course on cross-site scripting, stating the basics, so quite a lot of text, but don't worry, we know that developers, they lack also to test and try and break things in order to understand how to rebuild things. So that's why we also provide lab directly in each of those lessons to help them to understand the basics, but also what is a cross-site scripting, for example, in action, and what is under the hood of a cross-site scripting. So this type of in-context lesson will help you to understand, first of all, what type of vulnerabilities are mostly being observed by the developer, because you will have a reporting of all the lessons they did, but also interact directly in the developer in those ID to help them to learn more or be more curious about the vulnerabilities than they may do the most. So this example simply show again, and I will go back into the slideshow for the last slide, simply show that success or successfully implementing education is basically passing by focusing on developers, making sure that not only you are aware of the way they like to learn, but also aware of what type of tool they are using, so to bring in context information. Opt-in executive buy-in, this is very important because any part of the education can't be done outside of hours of the developer. If the executive buy-in doesn't give the time to your developer or don't think this is important enough for the developer to get time during their sprint, for example, to learn about a new type of vulnerabilities, then it will be very difficult to implement. You need also the executive buy-in to get budget to potentially reward the developer who are being very good on the security front, or during a hackathon, for example, bring rewards in order to make this type of events much more interesting and much more interesting. Start small and voluntary. At the beginning, when you still define the process, where you implemented the tool and want to onboard the people with this education part, don't go full in with onboarding all the developer. Just start small on a small team, or for example, a team that you know will be interested by this type of initiative, and try to get voluntary feedback from your developer. Get the developer basically who may be the most interested, so they will provide feedback on how to improve before to extend to the bigger developer team. Offer rewards. This is related to the opt-in executive buy-in. Rewards are important during hackathon, during fixathon, during also for security champion to set up those big practice. You need to reward them in order to change this misconception that they have done security is a bottleneck and this is an additional part of their job that they don't like. Rewards does help in a way to provide more education and involve developer in this education. And the last part, which is the most important, set measurable and achievable goals. I know that you may be in a hurry to set up all this education to make sure all your developers are trained as soon as possible because you want to get back ROI. But this is important to not lose in a way this momentum to keep measurable goal and achievable goal to the developer, because if you are bringing too much complexity at the beginning, this is when you will lose in a way the interest from the developer. So this is the part on educate, and after all you need to do, this is a repeat, basically, iterate.
Great, so by now you learned a bit how to establish the foundational elements of your security strategy, and as Jenny just said, the next step of course is to iterate. Effective security will require continuous improvement, and one of the first ways to iterate would be to gather feedback from the team. And here it's important to create a culture of psychological safety and fun, which can foster engagement. It will surface issues quickly, and it will recognize achievements. When we're talking about psychological safety, here is ensure your teams feel comfortable speaking up. So Amy Adamson defined psychological safety as the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. She actually ran a study in the medical sector in which the amount of errors that doctors made or reported was overlaid with the patient outcome and satisfaction. It might probably go against what you think, but departments with higher reported rates had much better patient outcomes. So this is many mistakes mean more patients were surviving, were healthier, and were very pleased with their care. It doesn't mean actually that more mistakes mean better outcomes, but in those departments, it was shown that the medical professionals were encouraged to report their mistakes and share them with the team and learn from them. Adopting a major new security practice can be daunting for developers and security. Make it abundantly clear that no one will be penalized or embarrassed for missteps while learning. The goal here is to encourage transparency, candor, and continuous improvement. Psychologically safe team will surface vital issues early when they can be readily addressed, rather than let them fester into crises later on, like we heard about the Equifax breach earlier. We talked about feedback. And next, we want to talk about automation. Jenny mentioned it as well. Automate all the chores and repetitive tasks. Mundane work that consumes valuable time is prime for automation. You can leverage tools like Snyk that can automatically scan code, infrastructure, and dependencies for vulnerabilities. And you can configure such tools to run recurring checks like monitoring rather than demanding this from your team. With features like auto-fix pull requests, you can also build auto-remediation into security automations, and you can integrate tools like Snyk into your pipeline. Ensure your processes are future-proof. Security threats evolve rapidly, so your practices cannot remain static. When establishing new frameworks, ask how will this scale and build in some extra flexibility. Finally, consistently measure the effectiveness of your security strategy and set up measurable and achievable goals. If you measure mean time to fix, for example, and you're currently at 100 days to fix a vulnerability, a good achievable goal could be reducing that by 10% to begin with. An unachievable goal would be reducing that to 10 days mean time to fix over a month. All in all, what we're trying to say is the goal is to make the right thing to do, the easy thing to do. If you make it easy, then by default, you'll be more secure. You won't have people finding workarounds, backdoors, or vulnerabilities that you don't know about. And the final critical piece, of course, is to celebrate wins. Inject some fun into security adoptions through celebration and gamification. We already talked about things like capture the flag and hackathons. This type of activities can reframe security as something rewarding and communal, rather than rule-based and isolating. Gamification can be fun and engaging when and if the process is fun and the rewards are worth it. I would say be very careful not to fall into the trap of mandating complex games for security learning and offering poor rewards. I'll finish off with a story about a large telecommunication customer of Snyk and Log4j. Really sorry that I'm still talking about Log4j in 2023. But I heard this story and it really stayed with me. Don't know if you remember, but the vulnerability was actually disclosed more publicly on a Friday evening. That means most CISOs spend their whole weekend trying to figure out how will they tackle this vulnerability as soon as possible or latest on Monday morning. The CISO in question did the exact same thing. She prepared all the reports for Snyk. She was ready to go and tell the developers what they need to do. By the time she got to work on Monday, the developers have already opened pull requests for everything that was fixable, and everything was able to be merged and fixed within one day. That was only possible because they had the right people, the right processes, and the right technology to make that happen. So the key takeaway is that effective security is a journey, and it does require true collaboration between development and security teams. While each organization's needs are unique, assessing your maturity, identify opportunities to advance security in a way that works for your business. True collaboration means seamlessly embedding security into intuitive workflows. With the right culture, security elevates outcomes by empowering developers with guardrails and automation. So I encourage you to foster greater collaboration in your own environments. Bring security and development together and provide training and tools that make securing coding simple. Building these bridges creates a culture of security ownership and shared responsibility. At Snyk, our goal is strengthening these partnerships. Our developer-first security platform helps teams easily embed security. And with the recent acquisition of Enso, an application security management tool, we're better equipped to provide end-to-end visibility and control. Thank you for joining us today. I think we have a few questions that came up that we would like to answer. So I saw a question in the Q&A that I can take about the DevSecOps assessment being offered as a service. Yes, with the Snyk Professional Services, you can have a DevSecOps assessment done. So definitely contact us about that. And a few other questions came only to the hosts and panelists. So I'm going to read them out loud. For ease for everyone. how do you deal with false positives? So vulnerability that is a function of a library that's not actually used, and that's a very good question. You may have noticed when Jenny did a demo that you do have an option to ignore, you have an option to create policies. I will say that generally we don't have this problem very often, but you do have an option to do that if it's needed, and even create policies around it.
To add more information on those questions, we will bring always more context to the result than we will provide. So for example, for software composition analysis, the context is, for example, exploit maturity or reachability. Is this library being used in my code, for example, which will help you to understand if indeed you may have a false positive or vulnerabilities in a function of the library, which is not actually used. For the SAS scanning, when we detect vulnerabilities, we don't only do a type of semantic analysis. We'll always look at the source in order to understand the sink. And this source and sink can be in between different files. Therefore, a SAS analysis will lead to a fewer type of false positive, because we try really to understand the context of the vulnerabilities by finding the source and the sink in order to provide as much context as possible to the results. There is another question. How is this working in watertight developer environment? Example, regulated environment where developers have limited or no access externally. So I will use a Snyk example. So Snyk is a SaaS product. You can see the platform. I did access to it via snyk.io. The ID plugin doesn't provide local scanning. You need to connect indeed to our server at some point to get the scanning. So you will need in a way to make sure that the firewall that you set up open the access to our very secure environment. So we are a cybersecurity company. So of course we have got all the standard and certification in place to protect your data. We are not storing your data into our server. This is important to take that into account. If not, we have got more than 3,000 customers. You would imagine that we need to pay a lot in storage if we would do that. So this is just for the time of the scan, then we get this information from your repo, for example, to then provide the results. So in a developer limited or with no access externally, we would advise to, in a way, whitelist Snyk, for example, to make sure that there is this exchange with our server, which is possible. The last question was in the question. I did reply, but let's go back into it. Is it possible to focus only on certain version of application, code branches, for example, or Docker image version? Of course, I didn't show you all the parameters and settings. Today was not really a presentation of Snyk, but mostly a review of the DevSecOps practice, how to set that up. But if you want more information on the Snyk platform, we'll be more happy to give you a demonstration, because you can indeed not only scan code branches and different tags of container image, but also monitor different type of branches and container image, of course. So feel free to reach out if you want more information about Snyk.
Wonderful. I think that was the last question. And I think this is it for today. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alma. And hope to see you soon, either during a more formal demonstration of Snyk, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Have a great day all.